Hello, Mr. Nance. So I am here today with Mr. Nance. He is an operations manager and paramedic, and the essence of this interview is uh, to expose people to the diverse careers in healthcare, not just the traditional doctors and nurses, so that we can educate the public and get a more in-depth understanding of the careers that are actually out there in healthcare. So my name is Juliet Amadi. I'm the president of the Health Professionals Club at Dallas College. Mr. Nance, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
My name is Randy Nance. I'm the operations manager for American Medical Responses EMS operation in Ellis County, Texas.
Okay, so we'll just hop right into the questions. So, Mr. Nance, what motivated you to become an operations manager and paramedic?
So I never really actually had planned it early in my career on becoming an operations manager. I became a paramedic at a young age. I was 21 when I finished paramedic school. I got into emergency medical services at 19. Started off at what is the lowest level that you can work at professionally, which is an emergency medical technician or an EMT. I enjoyed that, and my department decided that they wanted me to go to paramedic school, which is the higher level of training that includes lots of pharmacology and cardiology and things like that. So they sent me to paramedic school, and I graduated that at 21 years old and have been doing that since. It's just the enjoyment of being able to help my community and help people in need.
Okay, so you touched a little bit on this in your answer, but what was your academic journey and thought process to get to your chosen career today?
So initially, EMT and paramedic are certification classes. It's a 6-month EMT school. Paramedic school was right about a year and a half before it was all completed. It's lots of classroom time involving identifying, diagnosing, and coming up with treatment plans for different injuries or illnesses, and then formulating and carrying out that plan. So there's a lot of um, training in just early, quick recognition of different ailments or injuries to people. So learning, what's involved in a car accident and what injuries that person might have from that. What's involved in someone having a heart attack and what symptoms and problems could develop from that, and then finding your treatment pathway to complete successful care of that person and delivering them to a hospital where there's physicians and nurses to better care for that person. On top of that, I also hold a bachelor's degree, Bachelor of Science degree in Emergency Services Administration. That was a 4-year college degree developed and designed around what do you need to have at the chief level. So there's lots of finance and budgeting and staffing and human resources issues, emergency management. So, in the case of a tornado strikes your town, what are the priorities you need to set forward to take care of that issue, or large fires, things like that. Building and developing plans to mitigate that disaster as well.
Okay, that's very all the components that go into understanding what happens so that you can adequately take care of the patients. Could you walk me through a day or a week at your job as an operations manager and paramedic for each one, please?
My daily job is really just kind of the day-to-day overview of our EMS operation. In Ellis County, we have at any given time anywhere from 8 to 10 ambulances on the street serving our community, which comprised of city of Waxahachie, Red Oak, Ennis, and all of the rural areas in that area. Ellis County is a very rural country or county. There's a lot of country spaces, lots of people that live way out away from from cities. So we had to come up with a plan to be able to get an ambulance to those people in the right amount of time. So part of my day-to-day job is just making sure that we have the right assets in the right places, and overseeing my duty captain. Each shift has a captain. So we're built of 3 shifts. We work very similar to the fire department. We have an A, B, and C shift. Each of those guys work every 3rd day. Each crew, or all of my crews together, fall under a captain. It's a supervisor that manages their stuff. So my job really, in honesty, while I said is managing and overseeing that, really my job is more of a support role. It's making sure that my captains have what they need to be able to make sure their crews have what they need. And that kind of fluctuates from day to day, what my day is going to be. So in all honesty, every Monday is different. Every Tuesday is different. Wednesday is different. My days kind of flow to what is needed at that point. In a weekly deal, often talking to the fire chiefs of the county, the emergency management director of Ellis County, just kind of seeing what is going on in the community, what's going on in the area, how things are going, dealing with hospitals, meeting with them. Is there anything that we could do to better serve them or better serve the community? Looking at not as much of a weekly thing, but we consistently look at our protocols, because all of our treatments are set forward by a physician. We all work under a physician's license, and we routinely evaluate our protocols to see if, hey, there's some research showing that, if we're treating someone with, I don't know, emphysema or congestive heart failure, there's some research that shows that medication A may be better than medication B. What do you think about making these changes, and kind of just the flow of the operation to see, what adjustments need to be made on a weekly or monthly basis.
I think that's very interesting how you're able to adapt to whatever is happening in the world, just to make sure that you're giving the most up-to-date care for your patients. So the next question is, what are some, I know we tend to focus on hard skills, but what are some of the soft skills and hard skills needed to be successful in this career?
So this job really requires the ability of a person to communication. I mean, that's one of the biggest things, having good interpersonal skills, the ability to talk to a county commissioner or a high up politician and then turn around and talk to a 6-year-old on the street. Being able to just interact with people very well, that's, to me, is the most important part of my job. A lot of my job involves just communication with the community. Be that someone calls having a concern about, hey, I don't know, we left something in your ambulance and we need that back, to one of your crews did something that a person might perceive as not the right way to handle something, and being able to go from, hey, let me help you find this, or hey, let me look in to see what's going on, and then turning around and explaining, or circling back and discussing with people what issues they've had or questions they've had. If you don't have the ability to interact with people without sounding like a machine, it's very difficult to be successful in my position. I am very fortunate in that I have worked in Ellis County for over 20 years. So, the fire chiefs, the firefighters, emergency management people, most of the city councilmen, the county judge, these are all people that I have known the majority of my life, really. I mean, my entire adult life. So that is, for me, falling into this position or stepping into this position was not as much of a challenge as it might be for someone who is new to an area, doesn't know anybody, has to learn the politics, learn you kind of have to have a feel for the room, right? So for me, that's fairly simple. I've known this community my whole life, so it's fairly easy for me to walk into Red Oak High School and talk to teachers or principals as it is for me to walk into the Ellis County Courthouse and talk to the judge. But for me, I guess just long circle around on that. Communication is probably the biggest of soft skills, like just things that you have to be able to do that aren't like really something that can be taught. In all honesty, like it's kind of one of those things I think you either have to a point or you don't. I think you can soften yourself. I think you can harden yourself up, but I think that's kind of a core thing that's just already there that you have to be able to do. As far as the other things, just the medical knowledge, knowing what we're doing, how we're doing it. Are we doing this right? Are we doing this wrong? Finance, which for me was the hardest part for me to learn on my job, is finance and budgeting, because I struggled with math. So having to look at giant Excel spreadsheets full of nothing but numbers was probably the biggest challenge for me to learn for this position, and still is. I mean, it's something that this is a job, and EMS as a whole is a job where we're always learning, right? We're always trying to sharpen our skills and strengthen our knowledge and stuff like that. So having to learn that was, while a very important aspect of the job, was probably my most difficult.
Yeah, and I think that with the pandemic, I know that soft skills were needed and necessary before the pandemic, but I feel as though the pandemic has definitely made us more conscious about the importance and value of soft skills, and it's needed now more than ever to be able to do the required tasks. And so with that, what was the biggest what's the biggest lesson that you learned in your occupation?
Patience. Not always wanting, we always want the very best all the time, right? But people sometimes forget to learn that it's always a process, right? There's never an instant gratification for something. It's you look for your goal and you have to step towards that goal.
Right.
And that really has been one of the biggest things I learned. Like, I came into this job with all kinds of ideas and plans and ways that I thought we could do things better, right? When I first, from going from a paramedic in Ellis County to a captain in Ellis County to a operations manager, I had these ideas about, we're going to do these big things, right? These big lofty goals, which are good to have, but you have to remember that each one of those goals has a process of getting to it. So I had to develop and learn that, hey, it doesn't always happen right now. It's going to take, weeks, months, sometimes years to get to the goals that you have.
And my next question is, what are your interests, and what ways does your job satisfy them?
I really love interacting with people. I like getting to know different people and where they come from, and what their ideas and hopes and dreams and stuff like that are. I really do enjoy that. And this job gives me that ability to do that with the 75 employees that I have, EMTs and paramedics that work under me. One of the things I've always tried to do is really get to know those people, besides just, hey, this is John Smith, he's an EMT and he works on A shift, and he's been here for 2 years. That's easy, right? That's making someone a number. I like to know the story behind that person. What drove them to come into this? Why did they decide to work here? What keeps them here as opposed to going out to another job? And I also like the interaction with the public, like with our communities. We do a lot of community events. There's, festivals and things like that occur here in Ellis County, and I try to make it out to every single one of those. So like the city of Red Oak, where I spent the majority of my career, which is where I met Jessica. Every year they do a big 4th of July festival and things like that. And I try to get out and interact with the community and get to know people and talk to them and hear their concerns and hear their praises, because we all like to hear good things too, right? Not everybody wants to always hear what you're doing wrong. It's nice to hear what you're doing right too. So just interaction with people. is something that I do enjoy, and my job does allow that.
I do admire the fact that you like to get to know like to get to know those you come in contact with, because I think that's a very important aspect of leadership. Because how can you help just oversee or lead people if you don't really know them? So I think that's a great point. So what obstacles have you overcome in trying to create a work-life balance between your career as an operations manager and your personal life?
That would probably be a better question for my wife and kids. Um, just having to learn when to say stop. I am really bad about thinking of something at 10 o'clock at night and getting my laptop out and start hammering something out. And having to learn that, hey, you got to chill out a little bit. Like, it's time to, you know, work is work, home is home, and finding that division is very difficult. When I was a paramedic, it really wasn't that hard. I worked 24 hours and then I was off for the next 2 days. And so I could, at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m., whenever I left the station on the day I got off work, I left work at my station. And then I was home for 2 days with my family. And then on the third day, it was time for me to come back to work. And then it was time, and then so that was a very easy separation. Now is a little more difficult. I don't really have, my hours are 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. I'm supposed, off nights, off weekends. But in my position, as the fire chiefs are, the police chiefs are, the emergency management directors are, we're never really off. But learning to, and it's still a process, right? Learning to shut down and go, okay, this can wait till tomorrow. I'm going to enjoy my time with my family right now. Is difficult, especially now that my kids are older. They're all out of the house. It's just me and my wife at home now. Now it's like, oh, I can work a little bit longer. Or I can work a little bit later. To which my wife often goes, okay, shut it down. Like, this is our time. But it's a process, right? Like, it's just having to learn when is it time to step back and when is it time to stop for the day. Because if you let me, I would probably turn in 16, 18-hour days.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a learning process. It just takes a while to get a hang of, and it's always changing. But can you speak more to your role as a paramedic? Can you speak more into what's unique about your role as a paramedic as opposed to other healthcare professions?
So EMS, emergency medical services, we are quite often the front line or the first line of help that people get. Guys that go through EMT and paramedic school, when someone calls 911 for help, they have often reached a situation, whatever's going on, be it I feel like I'm having a heart attack, to I don't know, I fell and broke my fingers or broke my hand or something like that. They called 911 because they have reached a point in their problem that they can no longer deal with the situation themselves, and they're looking for help. And we're the people that are there to help, right? Like, if it's, whatever the case may be, when we get there, we are the first people and to try to figure out what's wrong with this person and start the chain of recovery, or the chain of help for them. What makes EMS, or pre-hospital care for EMTs and paramedics, so much different than what you see in the hospital or emergency room, stuff like that. Those are very controlled environments, right? It's warm or cool, either way. Either they have heat or AC. It's dry. There's lots of light. It's a controlled environment. For people working pre-hospital emergency care, so the EMTs, firefighters, paramedics, police officers, sometimes, we're in a very uncontrolled environment. It's often chaotic. There's lots of people around. There's often poor weather. There's poor environments, and we have to do the same job they do in the hospital of finding what's wrong with this person and how do we start to fix them in a very uncontrolled environment. And that takes a special person. Like that takes to be able to do that and tune out all the distraction and focus in on the person that needs your help. That takes a lot. It takes a lot of concentration. It takes a lot of dedication. It takes a lot of discipline to be able to do that. And I'm very proud to be a part of that profession. I think that being out in front and starting a chain of recovery for the person, especially when you hear later on, we get follow-ups from the hospital and you hear that they had a great outcome. They went home. What your guys did was this, and this, and this was the perfect way to get this started. That brings in a great feeling of accomplishment for the people involved in EMS and pre-hospital healthcare. And it's often forgotten, right? Like when I started doing this, EMS was really throw them in the ambulance and go to the hospital right now. Like we didn't do a lot of true care unless it was somebody in a cardiac arrest that we were doing CPR on, somebody that was bleeding profusely that we were putting bandages on and just slapping this on, throwing them in the ambulance and take off. Looked a lot like what you see in the old movies where it was almost Keystone Cop-ish. Like it was just get them away from the house as fast as you can. Now technology and education have changed so much that we actually have the ability to diagnose and really come up with a true treatment plan and how to fix people. We have cardiac monitors that we can do a 12-lead EKG so we can get a good look at the person's heart and see what's going on. And based on that, do we need to take protocol 1, 2, or 3 of this and make that decision and either just transport to the hospital, or we're going to put IVs in the people and we're going to give them some IV fluid, or we're going to do the IVs and the 12-lead, and we're also going to start giving medications before we get to the hospital. And I think being part of that is just a really cool aspect of the job.
With these technologies, what does continuing education look like for you? Do you have to renew by, taking a class online every once in a while, or do you go pursue a different degree? What does that look like?
So for us, there are several different ways that we do continuing education. I hold 2 different certifications. I have the state of Texas's paramedic. It's the Texas Department of State Health Services paramedic license. I also hold the National Registry of EMTs paramedic level, which means I could theoretically go work anywhere in the country that I wanted to. I would have to take reciprocity and get their state certification, but each of those have different requirements for continuing education. We have so many hours for National Registry. I have to do that every 2 years. I have to redo my National Registry every 2 years. I have to do my state every 4 years. And in that is different courses in the different disciplines that we do, either operational issues, cardiology, respiratory, pediatrics, geriatrics, just different things. And most of those courses are designed to what's the newest, like what's coming up, what's the best way to treat these individual cases. So it's a lot of education. It never stops. I've always said that I don't know it all, and the day that I think I do is the day that I will walk away from this job completely. But there's always aspects to learn new things and polish up things that you've learned in the past and get better at. But I think you caught me with that one. I think it's 70 hours every 2 years for my National Registry and 96 hours every 4 years for my state.
Okay, and do you have a specialization?
I do not. There are some paramedics that do primarily pediatrics. There are flight operation paramedics that their jobs are more designed towards either what we call fixed wing or rotor wing aircraft. So either an airplane or a helicopter, where there are specialized training that they go through to do those jobs. For me, I try to grasp all of the aspects of it and just make myself the best paramedic I can be. Doesn't matter what I'm going on. But I don't have any specialized training for that.
If you were to do specialized training, would you have to go into school for more years?
Not necessarily. For flight operations, you're required to have a certification. It's called FPC, it's Flight Paramedic Certification, or excuse me. There's also a critical care paramedic program. Critical care paramedics actually do attend a little bit more school. It's generally a 6 to 8 week course that just gives you much more education on different medications and different medical situations that they tend to treat more in the air operations or critical care operations. So it really depends on which direction you want to go.
Right. And so what advice would you give someone who is considering this profession as a paramedic or as an operations manager?
So 2 different roles. Okay, so one leads to the other, but for a paramedic, I would say really learn how to tune in to the person that needs your help. I've joked with paramedics that I've trained in the past that we're not always a clinician, right? It's not always all about starting your IVs and giving medications and things like that. Often we're there to do something as simple as hold someone's hand and comfort them. And being able to be that person that someone will feel comfortable with is vital to this job. So, and learning what that person needs. Like often the reason they call 911 may not be the real problem at hand. You have to really be able to dive down into that person and see what's going on and see what they really need. Just being able to turn off the robot inside of you that goes, okay, this is it. I have to do point A, B, C. Sometimes it's like, hey, I'm gonna start at point A, and then but then we're gonna wind up way over here at X, right? You have to be able to get out of a normal routine and just adapt to the situation that's given to you. And that's, to me, that's the most important part of being a paramedic. It's not just, do I know there are 74 medications in my ambulance? Do I know every single thing about every single one of them? I should know a little bit about all of them, and I know how to use them and when the right time is, but I also have a protocol book that can guide me that way also. And that's important. But I think that being able to read your audience and really understand what's going on in the situation is a even more important aspect of the job. Being able to be someone that people are comfortable with is a very important aspect of the job. As far as being an operations manager, it's falls somewhat in hand with that, is being able to understand your audience as far as the communities that you serve or your employees that work for you.
She may be frozen for a second.
Yeah, I just saw that.
Oh, yeah.
So sorry, I'm having internet connections on my side.
Okay.
Were you able to finish your response, Nance?
Yes, I did. Jessica, do you think that caught?
Yes, sir. All of that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. But as we conclude this interview, is there anything that you would like us to know about being a paramedic and an operations manager? Anything maybe that's unique that people wouldn't really know about?
I think we really kind of covered it all. You know, like I said, being a paramedic, you know, the community does see me in my job now as an operations manager, but what they really see are the people that work under me, the EMTs and paramedics that are out on the street. And it's just really it's a privilege. It's a really big privilege to be able to serve in that role. And it's something that I have enjoyed for all in all almost 27 years now. So it's a great profession. We're always going to be needed. There's always going to be someone that has an emergency somewhere. While doctors and nurses it's nice and it's fancy and the pay is great. And, there's something to be said on our aspect of the job of being out with the people and being out with the communities.
Thank you, Mr. Nance, for being with us this morning. Thank you for being with us this morning. And I really do appreciate all of the advice and the feedback and the answers that you've given. So thank you for your service.
Well, thank you. I appreciate y'all having me.